Have you ever felt the need to explain yourself, what you're building, where you're going, what your dreams look like, only to realize later that the more you talk, the less you move? That somewhere between the words and the explanations, your energy starts to fade and your focus begins to scatter? It's a common trap. Most people fall into it without even realizing. They think that speaking their goals into the world gives them strength, but in truth, it often does the opposite. The more noise you make, the less mystery you hold. And without mystery, your power begins to slip away. We live in a world obsessed with visibility. Everyone wants to be seen, noticed, applauded. Social media has turned silence into suspicion and exposure into currency. But here's the truth no one tells you. The most powerful moves are made in silence. The deepest growth happens in the dark. And the loudest victories are won long before the crowd ever hears your name. You don't need to broadcast your progress to make it real. You don't need to explain your journey to make it valid. And you don't need to be seen to be significant. There's something sacred about moving in silence. Something powerful about working without the need to announce every step. When you stop talking about what you're doing, you protect your energy. You preserve your purpose. You hold on to your fire instead of scattering it into conversations that do nothing but dilute your vision. Most people talk because they're seeking validation. They want someone to confirm they're on the right path. But here's the thing. Greatness doesn't need confirmation. It doesn't beg to be understood. It simply becomes undeniable. The ones who truly change their lives, the ones who rise, aren't the loudest in the room. They're the quiet ones, the focused ones, the ones who skip the noise, dodge the spotlight, and do the work when no one's watching. They're not concerned with applause. They're addicted to progress. They don't post every step. They master every step. And when the time comes to show the world, it's not with noise. It's with results. Ask yourself, what could you build if you stopped needing to be seen? How far could you go if you didn't feel the urge to explain your every move? How much further would you be if you focused on doing instead of telling? The truth is, the most dangerous person in the room is the one you know nothing about, the one who's been quietly leveling up, quietly healing, quietly building. While others were performing, they were preparing. And when they show up, it's not to impress, it's to dominate. There's a reason silence intimidates people. It creates uncertainty. It forces others to pay attention. Because when you stop talking, they start wondering. When you become unpredictable, you become powerful. And when you no longer seek permission or praise, you become free. That freedom, emotional, mental, spiritual, is the beginning of real success. Not the kind that looks good for a moment, but the kind that lasts a lifetime. Because you built it in truth, in discipline, and in silence. People may call it arrogance. Let them. People may say you've changed. That's the point. You're not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to become undeniable through the life you create, not the words you speak. Every second spent explaining yourself to someone who doesn't see your vision is a second stolen from building it. Every time you share your plans with someone who isn't capable of dreaming on your level, you risk shrinking to make them comfortable. So protect your mind. Guard your ideas. Hold your vision like it's sacred, because it is. You weren't given your dreams to impress people. You were given them to build something eternal, to lead yourself first before the world ever notices. The reward of silence is clarity. The gift of staying quiet is that it sharpens your instincts. You begin to hear your own voice again. You stop needing noise to feel important. You stop needing approval to move forward. By the end of this message, you'll understand that you were never behind. You were just too loud about things that should have been kept quiet. You don't need more attention. You need more focus. You don't need more followers. You need more follow-through. And the moment you stop explaining, you start evolving. That's where everything changes. That's where your real power begins. Because those who focus in silence eventually win in public. And when that moment comes, you won't need to say a single word. Your results will speak volumes. The reason most people never reach their highest potential isn't because they lack talent or vision or opportunity. It's because they talk too much and act too little. They trade execution for exposure. They confuse motion with progress. Every time you open your mouth to announce what you're going to do, you release pressure. The pressure that could have been used to drive results. You give yourself the reward of being heard instead of the reward of achieving. And while it might feel good in the moment, it steals the fuel your ambition needs to go the distance. Talking about your plans gives your brain a premature hit of satisfaction. It tricks your mind into thinking you've done something when all you've done is speak. Research in behavioral psychology confirms this. When people share their goals publicly, they're less likely to actually achieve them. Because once the social reward is claimed, the drive to earn the real one weakens. You're not chasing the goal anymore. You're chasing the applause. And applause never built anything real. If you want to live differently, you have to train your mind to delay that dopamine, to resist the urge to tell the world, to stay grounded in the process even when no one sees the effort. This kind of discipline isn't easy. It requires self-awareness. It requires self-control. But the payoff is massive. Because while others waste their energy seeking validation, you'll be using yours to sharpen your craft, master your habits, and grow in ways they'll never see coming. Let silence become your secret weapon. Let it become the room where you breathe, think, plan, and execute without distraction. When you keep your goals to yourself, you protect them. You keep them pure, free from the doubts and projections of others, free from the comparison traps that cripple so many dreams before they even start. Because the moment you make your goal public, you invite noise. And noise has a way of drowning clarity. You don't owe anyone your strategy. You don't need to convince anyone of your worth. Let them wonder what you're building. Let them doubt you. Let them think you've fallen off. The less they know, the more they assume. And assumption is where your advantage lives. While they speculate, you're stacking wins. Quietly, consistently, relentlessly. Power isn't about being loud. It's about being undeniable. It's about showing up with something so strong, so refined, so polished, that when it's finally revealed, no one can ignore it. That kind of power can only be built in silence. It can only be born through private effort, private battles, private growth. You don't become unshakable by shouting your intentions. You become unshakable by honoring them day after day without needing the world to notice. And here's what no one tells you. When you stop needing to be seen, you finally start seeing yourself. You begin to recognize your own potential, not through compliments, but through quiet progress. You start measuring your value by how far you've come, not how many people clapped along the way. That's the moment real confidence is born. The kind that doesn't need to be loud because it's rooted, unbreakable, carved from silence, tested by solitude, and built in the trenches no one else could survive. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. Your purpose is not a performance. You weren't created to live up to someone else's expectations. You were created to fulfill what's inside you. And sometimes the world isn't ready for that. Sometimes the people around you won't get it. They'll tell you to slow down, to play small, to be more realistic. That's when you have to choose. Will you shrink for their comfort or grow in your silence? Every time you resist the urge to explain, you give power to your future self. You shift your energy inward. You stop bleeding attention and start investing it. That shift over time creates unstoppable momentum. And that momentum, built without noise, becomes your armor. Because when you finally step into the light, you won't come looking for approval. You'll come carrying results. The most transformative chapters of your life won't be the ones people watched. They'll be the ones you endured in silence. The nights you didn't sleep because you were building something bigger than your fear. The days you kept going when no one clapped. The moments you trusted yourself enough to keep moving even when you were surrounded by doubt. That's what shapes you. That's what forges greatness. Don't give your power away by speaking before it's time. Don't trade the future for the thrill of being noticed today. Let your silence become the storm they never saw coming. Let your work speak so loudly one day that the silence you once kept becomes the legend they talk about. Focus in silence. Win in public. That's how real empires are built. The moment you stop announcing your every move, you begin reclaiming control over your energy. You stop leaking power. You stop scattering your focus. You stop handing pieces of your future to people who haven't earned the right to witness your growth. Every plan you keep to yourself becomes a private contract between who you are and who you're becoming. It's not for public approval. It's for personal transformation. And that transformation requires silence, because silence creates space. Space to think, space to heal, space to rise. Most people don't realize how much noise is destroying their clarity. They confuse movement with meaning. They talk about discipline but remain trapped in distraction. They start projects just to say they've started something. They chase validation with urgency but treat their vision with hesitation. And when results don't come, they blame the world instead of looking inward and admitting the truth. They spent more time performing than building. Real growth demands that you break that pattern, that you wake up to the cost of being constantly seen. Because every time you speak prematurely, you invite opinions that weren't meant to shape you. You allow voices to enter your mind that were never meant to guide you. And those voices, those doubts, those projections, those subtle seeds of fear can derail even the strongest vision if you're not rooted in your purpose. That's why silence is your sanctuary. It shields you from noise, from nonsense, from the pressure to please or explain. You don't need an audience to become great. You don't need applause to evolve. You need solitude. You need conviction. You need a deep burning why that doesn't disappear when no one's watching. Because the people who go the furthest in life aren't the ones constantly explaining their dreams. They're the ones executing when it's inconvenient. They're not loud. They're consistent. And consistency without noise is the most underrated superpower there is. There's a fire that grows inside of you when you start creating in private. It's a hunger that doesn't need to be fed by likes or shares or praise. It feeds on purpose, on progress, on that deep, almost sacred satisfaction of knowing you're doing the work, quietly, consistently, and relentlessly. That fire changes you. It refines your identity. It turns discipline into instinct. It makes you dangerous, not in a destructive way, but in a way that demands respect without needing to ask for it. Every time you choose silence over performance, you're choosing power. You're choosing self-respect. You're choosing to protect your energy for things that actually move you forward. And over time, that discipline creates a level of strength that becomes unshakable. Because you're no longer reacting to the world. You're building a world from the inside out. A world where your value isn't based on visibility, but on results. Not on attention, but on alignment. And when those results start to show, because they will, the people who once overlooked you won't understand how you did it. They won't understand the hours, the discipline, the sacrifices, because they were too busy watching the loud ones. The ones who traded consistency for clout. The ones who talked big but delivered small. But you stayed hidden, focused, grounded. And now you rise not with noise, but with undeniable proof of who you've become. You're not behind. You're just silent. And that silence is not absence. It's preparation. You're not invisible. You're just intentional. You've chosen the harder path, the one that doesn't come with instant rewards. But it's the only path that leads to something real. And that reality, that strength, that quiet greatness, no one can take that from you. Because it wasn't built for show. It was built for truth. Keep building behind closed doors. Keep sharpening your skills while the world sleeps. Keep feeding your ambition in silence until it grows too loud to ignore. When you walk into the room, let the energy you carry speak for you. Let the results echo louder than any words ever could. And let the world be shocked not by your arrival, but by the fact that you never needed their permission to begin with. This is your time to stop performing. To stop explaining, to stop asking for understanding from people who cannot see your vision. Protect what's sacred, guard what's growing, focus in silence, and let the results scream your name when it's time. Because when that day comes, when everything you've been quietly building finally stands tall, you'll realize the silence was never empty. It was where your power was born. The world doesn't reward noise. It rewards results. And the truth is, most people never give themselves a chance to see what they're truly capable of. Because they waste their most powerful energy trying to be noticed instead of trying to be excellent. They chase eyes instead of mastery. They crave recognition more than growth. But recognition means nothing if it isn't built on something real. Clout fades, popularity shifts. But skill, discipline, and consistency, those are eternal. Those are the foundations no storm can shake. You weren't put on this earth to be liked. You were put here to lead yourself, to build, to become, to prove to the person in the mirror that you didn't fold under pressure. That you didn't cave when the process got quiet. That you didn't need cheers to keep climbing. Your real value isn't in how loud your life looks. It's in how deep your discipline goes when no one's watching. That's where your future is being decided. This silence you've stepped into, this sacred space of no announcements, no justifications, no begging to be understood, is the very space where your future is being born. Because now there are no eyes to perform for, no opinions to protect, no pressure to be anything but real. This is where your rawest self shows up. The version of you that isn't trying to impress anyone, but is trying to build something greater than anyone has ever seen from you before. And that version is dangerous. That version is powerful because it's focused, it's unshakable, it's free. When you stop telling the world what you're about to do, you start reclaiming something precious, your inner authority. You stop outsourcing your confidence. You stop handing the weight of your vision to people who don't have the strength to carry it. You stop asking for feedback on dreams they were never built to understand. And in that decision, something shifts. You become the source, the engine, the fire that no one can extinguish, because it no longer depends on their approval to burn. There's something unstoppable about a person who's at peace with being underestimated. When you don't need people to see you, you move differently. You stop trying to rush results just to prove something. You stop trying to explain every step to people who don't even understand the first chapter. You start playing the long game, the quiet game, the game that most people quit because it doesn't come with quick rewards. But you stay in it because your goal was never to impress, it was to evolve. And the ones who evolve in silence, they always win in ways the world can't predict. Because by the time the world wakes up to their presence, it's too late to compete. They've already built the habits. They've already trained the mind. They've already developed the discipline, the patience, the intensity, and all that preparation done in the dark turns them into a force the spotlight can't ignore. This isn't just about working harder. It's about protecting what matters. It's about guarding your inner world from noise, doubt, and unnecessary distraction. When you tell people your goals, you invite their projections, their fears, their insecurities. And even when they mean well, those words can take root in your mind. They can make you question your path. But when you stay silent, you stay sovereign. You think clearer. You move smarter. You trust deeper. You don't need a crowd to grow. You don't need approval to act. You need hunger. You need purpose. You need the kind of self-respect that says, I don't need to be seen right now because I'm not done building. That mindset is rare, but it's also the foundation of everything extraordinary. The greatest artists, leaders, athletes, and thinkers didn't rise because they shouted. They rose because they worked, and they worked when it was boring, when it was hard, when no one clapped, when it was just them, their vision, and the relentless decision to keep going. That's the kind of fire you carry now. The quiet, powerful, focused kind. The kind that doesn't flicker in the wind because it was forged underground. In the silence, in the struggle, in the process no one else saw. And when that fire finally rises, when it breaks through the surface and the world sees what you've become, it won't be a surprise. It'll be a shock. Because you didn't just talk about it, you became it. So don't break your silence for comfort. Don't trade your progress for attention. Hold the line. Keep the vision close. Keep the process sacred. Because one day, everything you're building right now, away from the noise, away from the spotlight, will rise so loud you won't have to say a word. Your results will be undeniable. Your presence will be unforgettable. And your silence will be remembered as the most powerful decision you ever made. The more you grow in silence, the more you realize how much of your old life was built on noise. The need to prove. The urge to be validated. The constant pressure to show you're doing something, even if that something wasn't aligned with your deeper purpose. But once you taste the clarity that comes from not needing to explain yourself, you never go back. You stop chasing moments that look impressive and start chasing moves that change everything. You stop trying to look successful and start becoming unstoppable. This isn't just about hiding your actions. It's about transforming your mindset. It's about understanding that every word you don't say becomes energy you can reinvest into execution. That every explanation you withhold becomes clarity you reclaim. You begin to operate on a higher frequency, one that isn't built on distraction or doubt, one that doesn't require the world to understand your pace. Because you understand your mission, you no longer owe your past version an audience. You owe your future self results. And the fastest way to get there is to strip away everything that slows you down, especially the compulsion to talk. Because talking satisfies the ego. It makes you feel important, but feeling important doesn't move you forward. Doing the work does. And the more you do in silence, the more potent your growth becomes. It's not diluted, it's not interrupted. It's focused, pure, real. You start to realize that success isn't some loud explosion. It's a quiet compounding. It's the tiny, consistent actions that no one sees. It's the sacrifices that never get applause. It's the battles you fight within yourself every single day and still show up. And while others are busy broadcasting their ambitions, you're busy mastering yours. That mastery, earned in isolation, builds a level of confidence that no external validation can replace. There's an edge you develop when you don't let the world into your process. You move differently. You carry yourself with intention. You make decisions based on growth, not popularity. You cut distractions faster. You set boundaries without guilt, because your mind is no longer cluttered with everyone else's expectations. It's focused on what actually matters, who you're becoming. People will try to pull you back into the noise. They'll ask questions. They'll wonder what happened to you. They'll say you've changed. But that's exactly the point. You're not who you used to be because you're no longer operating at that frequency. You're building something sacred. And sacred things don't need to be shouted about. They need to be protected, nourished, and revealed only when ready. Silence becomes a test of emotional strength. Can you keep showing up without being seen? Can you keep working when no one claps? Can you keep building when the results haven't shown yet? That's where most people quit. They lose momentum because the outside world isn't cheering them on. But when you've trained yourself to move without applause, you become limitless. Because now the motivation doesn't come from outside, it's ignited from within. You start to value solitude because it sharpens you, it eliminates the fluff. It forces you to face the real work, the uncomfortable truths, the places you still need to grow. And through that raw honesty, you build power. Not temporary power that depends on how others see you, but permanent power that's rooted in who you've become. Every moment you stay silent is a moment you stay focused. And every moment you stay focused is a step further than most are willing to go. Because people crave comfort. They crave recognition. But transformation doesn't live there. It lives in the quiet, uncomfortable, relentless pursuit of a future that only you can see. And when that future arrives, because it won't need your voice to validate it. It won't need a speech to prove it. Your life will be the statement. Your results will be the declaration. The way you walk, speak, create, and lead will carry a frequency that can only come from having endured the silence and mastered the unseen. So let them wonder. Let them talk. Let them question. Your job isn't to convince them. Your job is to become undeniable. And the only way to become undeniable is to stop giving the world your voice before you've given yourself your victory. Honor your path enough to walk it without noise. Respect your growth enough to keep it sacred. Because when you finally rise, and you won't just win, you'll redefine what winning looks like. Focus in silence, build in silence, win in silence. And when it's time to speak, let your results do all the talking. The reason most people never rise is because they exhaust their energy being visible instead of becoming valuable. They want to be known before they are ready. They want recognition before they've earned results. But the world doesn't reward potential. It rewards proof. And proof doesn't come from talking about what you're going to do. It comes from doing what no one thought you could, again and again, until your success becomes impossible to ignore. This is the discipline most will never understand, the ability to keep building when no one's clapping, the mental toughness it takes to show up every single day without an audience. That's where true strength is forged, not in the spotlight, but in the solitude, not in public applause, but in private commitment. You don't need to be seen to make progress. You need to be consistent. You need to be focused. You need to be relentless in your execution, even when the results are invisible to the world. There is something sacred about doing the work in silence. You are no longer performing for attention. You are moving for impact. You are no longer speaking out of insecurity. You are building out of intention. Your silence becomes a statement, a signal to yourself that you've outgrown the need for external validation, that your dreams are no longer on display, they're under construction. When you choose silence, you're not retreating, you're rising, not in noise but in depth. You are protecting your energy, your mission, your mind. You are refusing to hand your power to people who haven't earned access to your process. And in doing so, you become untouchable. Because no one can interfere with a strategy they know nothing about. No one can sabotage a plan they've never seen. Every time you silence your ego, you strengthen your execution. Every time you say nothing and do everything, you multiply your momentum. That's the game most people never learn to play. Because they're addicted to being seen. They're dependent on approval. They chase the illusion of success instead of cultivating the roots of it. But you've chosen differently. You've chosen to grow underground, to let your character lead before your image ever arrives. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. Let your discipline be your declaration. Let your consistency be your comeback. Let your silence be the loudest roar you've ever made. The kind that doesn't scream for attention but commands respect the moment it enters the room. Because when you rise, you won't be asking for a chance. You'll be setting the standard. You won't be waiting for the spotlight. You'll be shining from the fire you lit when no one else believed in it but you. That's the moment your silence becomes your legacy. Not because you hid, but because you had the strength to protect what mattered most. You built when it was hard. You worked when it was quiet. You endured when it was lonely. And now, everything you've been shaping in the dark is ready to be seen in the light, not as a hope, but as a force. And it's not just about reaching your goals. It's about who you become in the process, the discipline you build, the resilience you earn, the peace you gain by not being dependent on anyone else's approval. That's the victory. That's the reward. Not the trophy, not the title, but the person who rises from the silence with nothing left to prove and everything left to offer. So let them talk while you build. Let them guess while you move. Let them assume while you evolve. You have nothing to defend, nothing to explain, nothing to perform. Your only job is to honor the vision within you and do the work it requires, regardless of who's watching. Because the day will come when the world sees everything you've created, and they will wonder how you did it without ever making a sound. That is the power of silence. Not passive, not timid, but intentional, purposeful, strategic. It's the weapon of the focused, the shield of the disciplined, the foundation of the great. You don't need to shout when your life becomes the message. You don't need to convince when your results do the talking. So hold your silence with pride. Guard it like gold. Because when your moment comes, it will be undeniable, and no one will ever forget how powerfully you moved without ever saying a word. There comes a moment when you realize that silence isn't just about discipline, it's about identity. It's about becoming the kind of person who doesn't need to declare their power because they've built it within. The kind of person who doesn't chase status but creates substance. And when that shift happens, everything around you begins to change. You stop trying to be impressive. You start becoming impactful. You stop aiming to be seen. You start preparing to be unforgettable. This is where real confidence is born. Not the kind that shouts, not the kind that shows off, but the kind that radiates from within because it was built in truth, not in performance. The kind that isn't shaken by silence because it was formed in it. That's the kind of confidence that can't be faked. It's not loud, it's not flashy, but it moves with certainty, and people feel it long before you speak. You begin to see how much of your previous life was tied to needing approval, needing reassurance, needing proof that you were enough. But once you break free from that craving, you become a different force. You no longer adjust yourself to fit the world. You reshape the world around the truth of who you've become. And that truth, it was sculpted in the silence. In the nights you stayed focused while others slept. In the days you kept going while others quit. In the hours you chose growth over comfort, alignment over attention. There is nothing more powerful than a person who no longer needs to prove themselves. That kind of power doesn't come from recognition. It comes from the work, the self-mastery, the quiet, repeated decision to keep building when no one notices. And the more you commit to this path, the more you understand something most people never will. Not every win needs to be shared. Some victories are for you. Some growth doesn't need to be posted. Because when you're building legacy, you don't waste time on momentary applause. You're playing for impact, not impressions. You become dangerous the day you stop needing anyone to believe in you but yourself. Because now, your focus is undivided. Your energy is undiluted. You're no longer distracted by doubt or drained by the pressure to impress. You've entered a mental state that few ever reach, the state of internal certainty. And from that place, every action you take carries weight. Every move you make has direction. And your silence speaks louder than words ever could. Let them wonder why you're so quiet. Let them talk about your absence. Let them assume you've slowed down. Meanwhile, you're deep in alignment. You're sharpening. You're elevating. You're preparing something so real, so unshakable, that when it finally arrives, it doesn't just make noise. It makes history. This is what most people miss. They're so busy chasing visibility that they never develop value. They want the spotlight before they've earned the substance, and when the light hits them, they're exposed, not elevated. But you're different. You understand the process. You respect the preparation. You know that what's being built in silence has more weight than what's being celebrated too soon. And because of that, your rise won't be hype. It will be truth. It takes courage to stay silent. It takes strength to keep going without feedback. But that's where transformation lives. That's where greatness is born. When you move without applause and still give your all. When you train without eyes and still go harder than ever. When you wake up every day and act like the world is watching, even though it's not. That mindset, that's what separates the few who succeed from the many who settle. You don't need to rush your revelation. You don't need to force your breakthrough. When you're aligned, consistent, and silent, the results take care of the rest. And when the time is right, you won't have to announce yourself. You won't have to explain where you've been. The world will feel the shift. The impact will be undeniable. And the silence you once kept will be the very reason they remember your name. So keep your head down. Keep your heart locked on the mission. Keep your voice focused on the work. Because while they're watching for noise, you're preparing for dominance. While they're seeking attention, you're securing legacy. And legacy doesn't scream. It doesn't beg. It doesn't rush. It rises, silently, powerfully, permanently. That's what you're building now. Not a moment, not a trend, but a foundation so strong it doesn't crumble under pressure. A presence so steady it doesn't need to be loud. A future so powerful it won't need your words, it will stand on its own. And that future, it's already forming. Every second you stay focused in silence, it grows. Every moment you choose purpose over noise, it strengthens. And one day soon, that silence you kept will be the thunder they never saw coming. There is an unmatched strength that comes from knowing you no longer need to explain yourself. Not because you've given up, but because you've grown beyond the need for approval. You've entered a different league, a space where your validation is internal, your discipline is automatic, and your mission is so personal that words could never truly describe it. That's the level most people never reach, because they never stop performing. They're too caught up in being seen. But the deeper you go into your purpose, the less you crave visibility and the more you crave precision. You start to understand that your silence is no longer a lack of words. It's a presence that demands respect without asking for it. A presence that carries weight without making a sound. Because you've realized the truth, power that is real does not shout. It radiates. It doesn't rush. It moves with calm intensity, rooted in preparation, driven by clarity, and that's exactly what your silence is becoming. A signal. Not of absence, but of transformation. Every moment you choose to protect your progress instead of promoting it, you grow stronger. You build momentum that cannot be measured by likes or comments. You create breakthroughs that are invisible to the outside world, but undeniable in their impact. The people who once questioned your quiet will soon be the ones studying your consistency. Not because you tried to convince them, but because you stopped trying altogether. You learned to sit with your ambition in private, to let it stretch you, mold you, refine you. You stop needing instant gratification because you've fallen in love with the grind itself. You've fallen in love with what it's turning you into. That's where the real transformation happens. Not when the world applauds you, but when you start applauding yourself for the silent progress no one else sees. This level of silence is not passive. It's surgical. Every thought is sharper. Every move is intentional. You've eliminated the noise. You've filtered the distractions. You've stopped entertaining conversations that drain your focus. Because your vision has become too valuable to waste explaining to people who aren't ready to understand it. Some people will never get it. And they're not supposed to. They were never meant to walk with you. And now, you're finally okay with that.